Late stage career transitions. It can be intimidating. You can look at the average age of anyone in technology and you're looking at some fairly young people. If you're in mid 30s, say 35 and over, trying to make the transition, it's not so much a knowledge problem. You can pick up the knowledge you've been learning your whole life. But can you actually break into this field that looks probably completely foreign than what you're doing now? Maybe it's tangential, but you feel like there's a significant barrier and you feel like you're starting over. That's really what stops many people from making a mid-career transition. Are you starting over and is that the right thing to do? Shouldn't you just keep going where you are? But obviously there's a reason why you are thinking about moving into the tech field or moving from one side of the tech field to another. And it can be any reason at all. Any reason is legitimate for you to make a move, 35 and up, 45 and up. First thing I want to give you is some perspective. At 35, you have more years of work in front of you than you do behind you. You're not even halfway into your career until you hit about 45. So this isn't that late of a stage transition. I know it feels like it. You've been probably 10 years or more removed from the last time you took an entry-level job. It's weird, isn't it? Thinking about you're going to be taking an entry-level job again. You're going to be starting at the bottom and working your way up, but you're not. That's really the myth that you have to break when you realize that you're not that far into your career relative to how long you have as an entire career. You're also never going to be starting from zero. You have experience, you have capabilities, you have transferable skills. You have to figure out how to frame your career so that it makes sense, so that you don't have to start at a junior level position. That's the hardest part about making a transition into technology or from one side of technology to the other. It can feel like you don't have any transferable skills, so you feel like you have to start on the ground floor. Anytime you do that, you make the transition into technology a lot harder. Because think about it. It doesn't make sense to give someone with 10, 15, 20 years of experience a junior level title. So the people trying to hire you, the ones that you're submitting resumes to, networking with, it doesn't make sense. That's one of the biggest barriers you have to overcome. If the people hiring you can't come up with something that fits into their box, and remember, a lot of these people are younger than you are. If it doesn't fit into the way that they look at the world, it's going to be exceptionally difficult to get past their mental barriers. And so don't do that. Don't feel like you have to start all over again. Get over that barrier too. You've got a lot of career left, so this isn't too late. And you're never a junior again. You will never be a junior level anything again because you do have experience, but you have to find the theme. Your career has a theme. There is 1, 2, 3 capabilities that you've been able to leverage your entire career to drive impact, to drive outcomes, to be as good as you are at your current job or at previous jobs. You can feel like a job hopper where you've gone from one industry to another industry to another industry, but I guarantee you, look at your capabilities. There's something that has made you stand out, that has made you successful when other people have struggled to do the same things. Those are typically soft skills. They aren't necessarily technical knowledge. Those are sometimes communication skills, your ability to persuade, your ability to make sales. You may be a marketer, whether you know it or not. You may be a marketer or a self-promoter, product promoter, company promoter, brand promoter. You may be that person who comes up with the ideas, who has some sort of an innovative streak or creative streak. Those are just a few examples. There are many, many more. But the best thing to do first, where you want to start is scrap your resume. It isn't a history of I did this, I did this, I did this. It's more of a history of why were you successful doing this? Why were you successful doing this? You're going to find your core capabilities. That will be one thread that you're going to rewrite, sort of reinvent yourself around. and put everything in the frame of reference of that career thread when it comes to capabilities. Now, there's another kind of thread that you may find in your career. How do you generate value for businesses? What is it that you do that is so valuable, that made you successful in all of your other jobs with all the other companies? What did they love about you? What did you do for them that generated a ton of value for them or that helped the organization out? What have you been recognized for? Again, you will likely find a common theme of how you make companies money. Even if you've had 3 different career transitions by the time you're 40, 45, it's always going to be centered around you generating value for a business. And you typically follow a theme. It's almost like a story. Characters follow an arc, but there is always some sort of fundamental archetype. How did you monetize your capabilities? How did you produce value? How did you save the company money? What is it that you did? And go back a few layers. Don't worry about the work that you did. Look at it from a higher level. What was the theme of value creation that's followed you throughout your career? So those are your 2 lines, your 2 threads. Here are the capabilities that I have leveraged my entire career to make me successful. Here is how I have always made companies money. Here is my monetization thread that has followed me throughout my career. Then you can craft a story. This is what's very important. When you craft a story, you are now saying, and this is the next logical transition for me into whatever technology field it may be. Now, it makes more sense to someone reading your resume. They understand why you're transitioning from one place to the next place to now here. Why are you coming from wherever it was that you were before into the technology field? Now it makes sense because you have a story that has common threads around your capabilities and around the way that you monetize, and the way that you return value to the business. And it's all held together by you saying, look, I know it seems like all of these things that I've done have nothing to do with what I'm doing now, but in reality, this is just the next evolution. It almost sounds like you planned it. From day one, this was the blueprint. But you're really saying, I've gone from technology wave to technology wave, or from tool to tool, and this is the new best tool for me to use to do what I've always done. So this is a natural progression. When you tell that story, it makes sense to people. It makes sense to hiring managers. They get it. They're more likely to see you in the type of, box that they're used to seeing people in. Even though you don't fit the traditional box, they can look at it and say, okay, this makes sense to me. That's a huge barrier when it comes to hiring managers. If it doesn't make sense, you're going to run into a significant amount of resistance. People are fairly static thinkers, unfortunately. The next thing is go back to what I said earlier. You're never going to be junior again, ever. So if you sit down in a room with mid-level people who have 5 years experience, 10 years experience, significantly less than you do, especially if you're at the 15 or 20 year experience mark, sitting down in those rooms, you are now sitting down with people who don't have any sort of frame of reference for where you are in your career and what sort of value you can bring to the business. You have to explain it to people who are going to have a hard time wrapping their heads around it. So don't go into those rooms. The temptation is to take the easy role, the junior level role, but you probably have already discovered is that it's really hard to land a junior level role when you have as much experience and as much of a background as you do. So that's not actually the easiest way to break into any field. Again, go back to those main themes that you wrote up and that you've built a resume and a story around. Tell that story to senior level people. Don't apply for junior level roles. Begin to work with people who are at the same level career as you are or more senior than you are, have been in their careers longer than you have. The reason you do this is because you are going to make more sense to them. They're going to see your value. because it's a lot like their value. Many of the things that they have learned and that their experience has allowed them to do, they're going to see the parallels in you. And when you tell the story, aligning with your capability threads and the way that you've produced money, the way you've produced revenue for the business, it makes sense to them. They are seeing not only the technology skills, they're also seeing the intangibles. They're seeing a little bit of themselves in you. And so you're going to be more successful getting into the room with more senior people. Don't target that junior level role, even though you're looking at it and saying, but that's all I'm qualified for. You're not. Your technical skills are at the junior level, but you have other capabilities that are at a senior level. Those are your most valuable capabilities until your tech skills catch up. So those are the ones you should market, right? Those are the ones you should leverage. Use those skills. Use the story. Target people who get it, who will immediately understand. The reason why they want to bring you in is because you now have these skills, but you, more importantly, have the kind of experience they do. They have a frame of reference to understand the benefits of that better than someone who's not even made it to your point in the career yet. Showcase your value to senior leadership. They're used to working with talent at your level. This is sort of an extension of the last piece, but this is really more of a, so now you went from talking to senior people to talking to senior leaders. Your message is going to be more credible with senior leaders than people with far greater technology capabilities than you have. Something we don't really advertise is until you reach a certain age, senior leadership doesn't 100% trust you outside of very big tech companies like the FAANG companies, Meta, Amazon, Google. They're a more young culture, and they're used to listening to the younger generation. And so they get a little bit more credit, and they get a little bit more face time and believability. However, in most established companies, especially larger Fortune 100 companies in legacy industries, those that aren't technology first, they're used to listening to people your age. And that's your advantage. They are used to taking advice from people who are senior, who have experience, who have been working for a while. And it's a bad bias, but you can use this bias in your favor. They're not used to talking to people who are credible in their 20s or early 30s. They're looking for somebody who they see as experienced enough to trust, who's been there, who's seen things. And in those situations, your technical knowledge is definitely a plus. But you are someone who is experienced, wise, and understands the technology. Senior leadership will listen to you better than they will listen to anyone else in the technology team who's under 30. Again, it's a bad bias. I wish it didn't exist. I wish we listened to everyone because there are tons of experts in their 20s. But in reality, in these bigger, older, non-technology first businesses, those behaviors haven't been reinforced yet. So when you talk to senior leaders, they're going to see your value, again, better than others, and they may find a role for you that leverages your new technical knowledge and capabilities while also using your older skills. That's those skills that you're transferring into this new role. So don't be adverse to, if you were in marketing, moving into a senior level marketing role, because you are a better marketer now since you can explain the technology side. You can talk to the technology organization. You have those capabilities. Heck, you could help them complete some projects. You can help the team understand requirements far better and articulate their needs from both a subject matter expert, domain expert perspective, and from a technical expert's perspective. So you have benefits outside of just slapping the keyboard. And you have to begin to market those because you can work your way into a technology role by establishing your expertise from that basis that you've already built. So if you were in marketing, target marketing. If you were in sales, target sales. If you were in human resources, target human resources. Align the senior leaders that you're talking with to that prior career knowledge, because that's going to resonate with them. They have a hard time talking to people in technology because they're not often domain experts. But if you are, you have a leg up. And senior leaders are more likely, number one, because you look more experienced, but number two, because you bridge two worlds that they have a hard time bridging themselves. You create value that way, and you're going to be able to get hired a whole lot easier targeting and getting into the room with senior leadership. Now, the next thing, you may have to create your own opportunities. A lot of what I've talked about is if you have a great network, it's not that hard to do, and do it for a few months and you'll find your first role. May not be exactly the role that you're looking for, but in reality, it's probably going to be a more senior role. You're probably going to be doing things that you're more comfortable with, and you'll use both your prior experience and your newfound technical capabilities. But that won't always work. Sometimes you have to build your own opportunities, and the best way to do that is to create a consulting practice. Now, you're not going to be able to pound on doors and get a consulting gig full-time right away. It's a painful process, and if you don't have a track record of success within that particular technical domain, it's very hard to stand out. So what you can do is something called micro engagements. While you're working or while you're going to school, offer services for an hour or 2 hours at a time. And again, combine your legacy skills, those old skills that you've been using and developing for your entire career, with your new technical knowledge. Find a need within your domain that has not been met very well, where there's this crossover that's necessary. Sell your micro engagements, that 1, 2 hours, maybe a 5-hour project here and there. Sell those, because a customer is far more willing to spend that small amount of money on a small engagement, and they're going to take a chance on someone that they may not for a larger engagement. You're going to get paid in the process. You're going to get a ton of experience with the sales process of consulting. You're almost interviewing for each one of these micro consulting engagements. So you're going to get very good at interviewing with people for the type of role that you're targeting in the future. And you're also going to start building a track record. As you begin to attract clients, you're going to have successful projects. You have people who will recommend you. So even though you don't have an extensive body of experience, on your resume, you can say, I've done 5, 10 of these micro engagements, and here's what people had to say about me. You're building and establishing credibility. You aren't just someone who went back to school or who completed a boot camp or was self-taught. You're someone who others have used and now recommend. That will build credibility, looks great on your resume. It makes it a whole lot easier for you now to go and get that job. Even though you don't have a ton of experience, those micro consulting engagements and those recommendations serve as powerful proof that you're ready for your first role. It's going to be a whole lot easier to land it because people will recommend you. The power of recommendations cannot be understated. They're selling you instead of you trying to convince other people. And you never know. One of those micro engagements might turn into a full-time job. That happens very frequently. Another thing that can happen is you all of a sudden have 2 or 3 clients, and this business that you started just to get your first job is now a full-fledged consulting practice. So there are definitely benefits to starting a business, doing these micro engagements, and as you are either transitioning out of an old job or finishing up your education, you can prepare yourself to move into that next step and into your new role. Now finally, write, teach, establish your expertise through creating great content. At your stage of career, you're probably very good at communicating. You've had to teach people. You've had to train people. You understand what it takes to deliver knowledge in a way that people can then apply it. That's a rare skill in technology. There aren't many people as you see doing courses and tutorials and online YouTube videos and everything else. The number of people that are effective teachers, it's a small number. As we age, we actually get pretty good at this. Why? We've had to do it. I mean, how many people have you had to train throughout your career? Probably a pretty big number. You've had to train people on your job. You've had to train your replacement probably in a couple of different places. You are constantly teaching newer employees. You understand the teaching and mentorship side. And you can apply that to create a body of work. 1 post a month, 2 posts a month. Over the course of a few months adds up. And now you have a body of knowledge, body of teaching that you can point to. And a hiring manager might find you by reading your content. That's an important way of sort of doing a passive job search. And as you learn, teach what you learn. Write up a post, do a video, do something that says, here's what I've learned, and I want to teach it to you. And showcase how good you are at teaching, how great you are at communicating information so that people are able to apply it, because that's really the gap. Anyone can say, here's some information. But the missing link that you probably understand better because you're more senior is how to give someone information in a way that they know how to use it and can do something with it. That thing that they came here to learn how to actually do. So that's an important showcaseable skill. By writing, by doing videos, you're going to be able to, in some ways, just attract jobs, attract people to you. You're also establishing credibility in the same way you would with micro engagements. It's fairly low effort. If you spend 1 day a weekend writing posts, you can easily produce 1 a month or sometimes 2 a month. You get better at writing, you get better at communicating, you're reinforcing what you're learning as you write and as you teach it. You'll actually learn where your gaps in knowledge are too. Anytime you start teaching something, you'll say, wait a minute, I need to explain this better, and you'll find that your education, you're filling in some of the gaps because your education's partial. They never teach you everything you need to know. And by writing, by teaching, you're really talking your way through what you'll be doing for a living, and you're learning as you go. It's part of the process of learning is this teaching phase. And there are people who work out ideas just by talking through them or writing through them. That may be part of improving your education process, making you more knowledgeable, making you more capable, making you more comfortable. If you're comfortable enough to teach it, to put this out into the real world, interviews are a whole lot easier. Answering technical questions in meetings gets a whole lot easier. Implementations, you're more confident in what you're doing. So writing and teaching have a lot of benefits, and you don't have to wait until you have 20 years of technology experience to start teaching even the things that you learned yesterday. And remember, the perspective that you bring isn't so much that you are an expert on the technology. It is that you are experienced in giving people information in such a way that they can use it. Your wisdom allows you to put yourself in some other people's shoes because you've had to do it before. And that's going to establish your credibility. And again, it's that intangible that you transfer over into your new job because you've been doing this for so long. You're not junior. People shouldn't be hiring you as a junior level employee, even if you only have entry-level technology skills. So those are the main points. Just want to quickly summarize. Number 1, remember, at 35, you got more years of career in front of you than you do behind you. You don't hit the midpoint until you're 45. Find your career themes. Those themes are going to be around, number 1, your capabilities, number 2, how you produce value. Number 3, get into rooms with people that are at the same or higher level of seniority than you are, because they're going to be the ones who get your value. Talk to senior leaders. Get in those rooms too. They enjoy having someone at your level of seniority because there's already sort of this expectation of trust. And few people are able to bridge the gap between technology and them and their perspective, which is huge. Finally, create opportunities. You can do that through a business, or you can do that through writing content and teaching. But sometimes you have to create your own opportunities. You have to create sort of this proof that you can actually do the things that you've learned how to do. It establishes credibility and puts you above everyone else. It gets you out of that "this is a junior level person" perception. So you can definitely make a career transition after 35, after 45. I didn't become a data scientist until I was 36. I had spent over 15 years at that point doing other types of technology work. So I transitioned into data science at probably the same time in your career that you're trying to transition into. You can 100% succeed. It's not as hard as you think, but don't think of yourself as junior. Look at yourself as senior. All of that stuff that you've brought from all of those years, it transfers over. Don't start out at the beginning. Don't be afraid to start. You can definitely succeed with a late stage career transition into technology.